What's the difference between 는 and ka? So 는 and ka are both particles, right? So they're technically similar things, but they aren't. And this is why I think you should stop asking that question. What's the difference between 는 and ka? And instead, I think you should just learn what 는 is. So the question you should be asking is, what is 는? What does it mean? Like, what does it do? And it's like this. Let's say a person like me is making TikTok videos and they're like, I want to start making Instagram reels. What's the difference between the two platforms? What do I need to change or like add on to make Instagram videos instead? And so somebody tells them what the differences are to watch out for, and boom, they have Instagram videos that kind of fit the platform, right? But if you, or let's say if you want to learn to ride a bike and you're like, the only transportation you know how to ride is the bus, and you're like, what's the difference between riding a bus and riding a bike? Getting the difference between those things probably isn't going to help you ride that bike. And it's the same thing with 는 and ka. They're different categories, and for that evidence, we call them different things. 는 is what's called a helping particle, and ka is what's called a case particle. Case is like grammatical case. So case particles, at the core, they're marking grammar, like what's the subject, what's the object. Whereas helping particles, they're there to add some meaning. So like 도 is a helping particle, and what it does is it adds meanings like also, even, or to. You know, if somebody asked you what's the difference between saying I did something versus I also did something, you probably wouldn't focus too much on the differences, like when you use which one. You would just explain to them what also means. And I'm gonna try to do that for you. Like, what does 는 mean? What nuance does it add? And to do that, we're gonna have some examples with sentences with and without 는, and look at what nuance is being added by using 는 there. 는 and ka, they're different categories. And to start, let me give you what I think 는 means, what nuance I think it adds. And I've thought pretty long and hard about this, and I think the best definition would be that 는 limits the scope of what you're trying to say, so how far something you say applies. And that's kind of confusing, so let's go over an actual example. And that example would be 얼굴은 예뻐. And that means your face is pretty, and I'm putting that intonation on there on purpose. So it could also be translated as their face is pretty. And when I say that in English, it sounds like there's, you know, more to the story, like I'm withholding some further comments. And if you show a Korean person 얼굴은 예뻐 without any context, their mind is probably going to go first to your face is pretty, but your body isn't. Or their face is pretty, but their personality is whatever. But actually, you don't have to interpret it that way, even though without any context, that's where their mind goes. So your face is pretty, but your body isn't. That's the contrastive 는. I think you see that in textbooks pretty often. But it could also be like something like you have a list of things like that you check for a, I don't know, modeling applicant, and you're like, 얼굴은 예뻐. 키는 178이야. So like their face is pretty, their height is 5'10". It's just they're listing things off, and this could be like the topic 는. And here's the thing, I don't want to go over each possible interpretation of 는 and give them names as separate things, like the topic particle, the contrastive particle. So I want to find something that's common to all of these interpretations. I want to explain to you that general nuance that applies to every single or almost every single use of 는 there is. And for that, let's try to find a common interpretation. So you want to say that something is pretty, but you really want to limit yourself to talking only about the face. It's not that you're saying other parts of their body isn't pretty, or even that they are pretty. It's just, let's just talk about the face. Let's limit our scope of the conversation to the face. That's all it does. Let's just talk about the face. And to make my point, let's look at some more examples. Let's look at something like 지갑에 10만 원은 있어. And one possible interpretation is like this. I have at least $100 in my wallet. And here's why that is. You're trying to say that you have a certain amount of money, but you really want to limit it to the fact that you have $100. You're saying you have $100, but you're not saying you don't have more. And what you're not saying is that you have exactly $100. Then, whether it's at least or contrastive or topic, what you're doing is you're limiting how much you're willing to say. You just want to say, I have $100, but I haven't checked how much I have. I could have more than that. You're not saying you don't have more. It's probably not 100% clear yet, so let's look at another example. This time we're gonna add 는 to a verb. So we're gonna get something like 유튜브를 보게는 해준다. And so let's imagine a scenario where I have a very controlling mom or, guardian. They control how I watch YouTube, I guess. And so you're saying 유튜브를 보게는 해준다. Yeah, they let me watch YouTube is the tone there. And what that's doing is like, yeah, they literally let me watch YouTube, but they only let me watch for 15 minutes a day. Or they only let me watch on the kids account or something. So again, you're putting a limit on how far watch applies. You're limiting it to just watch. Like literally your eyes can see YouTube videos, but nothing else about watching freely or watching fully. And if we take that 는 off and you make it 유튜브를 보게 해준다, that just sounds like, they let me watch YouTube. Yeah, they literally let me watch YouTube. So another way to look at this 는 being a limit would be to say it's like a caveat. There's a warning or condition there. And that's what 는 does. 나는, just talking about me, not talking about anyone else. Like for example, if you say 나는 한국인이다. Me, I'm Korean. Not talking about anybody else, just talking about me. I'm not saying other people aren't Korean. It doesn't have to be contrastive. Just that me, I am Korean. So that's all I want to leave you with, this general feeling of limiting what I'm saying. That's what 는 does in many contexts, whether it attaches to 나는 or 학교에서는 or 보게는 하기는. You can put it pretty much after everything. In all those cases, like for example, let's go over another example. Somebody asks you, did you study Korean? And you're like, 했어요. That means, well, I did it, yes. It's just plain and clear. But if you say 하기는 했어요, again, you're putting a limit on how much that is true. Like you did it, literally maybe. Like I did do it. Like it's a true fact that I did it. But there probably is a caveat or some withheld comments there like, I did it, but not well, or I did it, but not the way you want me to. Whatever, it could be anything really. And you might even use it without really having any specific thing in mind. You feel a little bit unsure, so you just want to qualify what you're saying and just, say, I did do it, and where is this conversation going? I did do it. And so we've learned that 는 and 은, they have this nuance of limiting what you're saying, a qualification. So how do you use this information? Do you the next time you feel like, I want to say this limiting feeling, you want to limit what you're saying, do you use 는? And no, that's not how you use books and videos like this, in my opinion. How you use these videos and books that explain grammar is you use them to understand new input. So you're reading, you're listening, you're speaking to people, and you see new cases of 는, and you're kind of focused because you want to learn this. And so you perceive this 는 being used, and sometimes the meaning is clear. Like it's very contrastive. They're saying 나는 blah blah, 너는. It sounds contrastive and you can understand it very instinctively. That's best. But certain times you won't be able to understand very easily, and you're like, I don't know how to interpret this. And then you remember, this video, oh, I think that guy said something about limiting the scope of what they're saying. Oh, okay, so they must be saying they like this. That's true, but they can't say they love it. That makes sense. So you have some language and some interpretation, and this video is helping you bridge that gap or connect that dot. And once you do that enough and you connect enough dots from language to meaning, like input to interpretation, input to meaning, input to nuance, and eventually you're going to be able to connect the dot this way to this way. So you're going to have some meaning, you're going to have a nuance you want to add, and your brain is just going to know where you should put that 는 or 은. You use them to understand new input. So I feel like I might have gone on some tangents I'll have to see in the editing. But thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. And to the people who leave likes and leave comments and things like that, thank you so much. I make these videos believing they're gonna be helpful, and it makes me feel really good to know that somebody appreciates them. So thank you so much again, and 봐주셔서 정말 감사합니다.